Don't look now, but things between the UFC and the current and only flyweight champion the promotion has ever known are getting very, very dicey. Currently, Demetrious Johnson is embroiled in a battle with Dana White and the promotion's brass regarding who he should fight next. Clearly, Demetrious Johnson has been on one heck of a run. He is one win away from breaking the all-time title defense record currently held by Anderson Silva and Demetrious Johnson. And in doing so, he has really taken a very talented division, but stripped it of a number of its, of its top contenders. And just a long story short, apparently what happened was he was offered Ray Borg, who's an up-and-coming fighter. We're not a huge name. DJ said, you know what? I'd like to fight Sergio Pettis, who I think is a little slightly bigger name, especially with his brother's the connection with his brother. The UFC said, no, we'd like you to fight Borg. Originally, DJ said, okay, that's fine. I guess I'll fight Borg. That's what you want. And then the promotion came back and said, no, now we want you to fight TJ Dillashaw. And DJ is saying, Dillashaw has never fought in my division. He's not a champion. It's just a fight doesn't make sense. They're claiming it's because he's scared. Either way, now the UFC is talking about taking away promotional or pay-per-view points, which helps give more money to the champion or anybody included who gets pay-per-view points. We also are looking at the scenario that Dana White, apparently according to the champ, has said, if you don't do what we say, we are going to not strip you, we're going to eliminate the division altogether, which is very interesting considering DJ has been one of the most active and dominant champions the promotion has ever seen. And that, lends a little bit of credence to the Jose Aldo situation, where Aldo was just not happy with the organization and, had a lot of problems, lost his fight with Conor McGregor, and just has been very, outspoken about his displeasure with the promotion. But now, as I correctly predicted last week, TKO lost to Max Holloway. He is nothing. He's not the champion. He's a legend, of course. He's a former champion. And Max Holloway now continues forward. I'd like to see Max Holloway face Frankie Edgar. Cub Swanson making a case, but considering both Holloway and Edgar have finished Swanson, I think that's the fight to make. I'm very relieved and very happy to see that Aldo, who's still just 30, keep in mind, has stated openly he wants to continue fighting, and that's great. Maybe he goes to lightweight. That'd be interesting. At the very least, I'd like to see him continue competing and work himself back into title contention. He's a great fighter. But either way, I really hope the UFC sits down with Demetrious Johnson, makes this right, makes one of their most talented champions, maybe not one of the most popular champions, one of the most talented champions, a deal, and makes things work for him. To be honest with you, I would like to see DJ versus Cody Garbrandt for the title. I really wanted to see a rematch with Dominic Cruz, obviously before Cruz lost the belt. But either way, some very interesting things possible if everyone can get on board. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 110 taking place in Auckland, New Zealand, featuring a heavyweight throwdown in the main event, which should be incredibly exciting. There are 6 main card fights altogether. I'll be breaking down all of those fights for you on this episode of the show. As per usual, my preliminary bouts will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Please check them out. The prediction panel, Benjamin Heller, who routinely posts and does a heck of a good job breaking those fights down. His work is almost always up in the Thursday, Friday leading up to the Saturday. So please keep checking back for those fights. He doesn't break down all the fights all the time, but when the fights he does, he puts a lot of work into, and he always does good work. I'm coming off a 7-5 showing. The fight that killed me was the Marlon Moraes. I felt he had won the third round, which I had it even after the first 2. I felt he won the third round and won that fight. The 30-27 was an absolute disaster of a scorecard. But it was disappointing. I did well with Holloway winning. Viviana Pereira's decision win was a big one. So I did okay. I just didn't do well enough. The slump is still continuing, but we see some light at the end of the tunnel. And I really like the fights on this card. I've broken down some fights, and I'm really happy with the way things broke down and played out. So we'll have to see if it, how things go. On that note, let's get to the first main card prediction. The first fight of the night takes place in the UFC's featherweight division. It is Alexander the Great Volkanovski of Australia, 14 wins and 1 defeat, takes on longtime Japanese veteran Pugnus Mizuto Hirota with a current record of 19 wins, 7 losses, and 2 draws. Now, Volkanovski made his debut in the promotion last November. He scored a TKO victory over a very game opponent. He has won 11 in a row, 10 of which coming by stoppage. For Hirota, he's coming for a win over Cole Miller. He has 4-0-1 in his last 5 fights and has revitalized his career a little bit since his initial run in the promotion. Physically, Hirota 1 inch, sometimes depending on sources 2 inches, but at least 1 to 2 inches taller than Volkanovski. but the Aussie has a 4-inch reach advantage, and Volkanovski is the younger man by a considerable 7 years. Now, Hirota is primarily a striking-based fighter. That's not 100% true, but he is a striking-first fighter. Let's call him that. He has power with 10 wins by knockout, but he is 8-6 on the scorecard, so his style doesn't always translate to, successful wins when they go the distance, successful performances when they go the distance. He has good head movement, enters and exits different angles when he's at his best. Now, he was rocked early on by Cole Miller during a quick exchange, but he rallied around and got the better of the striking exchanges. He relies heavily on his jab to enter the pocket and then land combinations once he closes that distance. Now, his numbers aren't overwhelming. He averages 3.49 strikes per minute, compared to 3.25 strikes absorbed per minute. His UFC best was 102, but he's had some hit or miss issues with his volume. He throws a good left hand, a short right hand as well. He'll really leap into a right punch to the body and then forces opponents to drop their hands, and then he comes up to the head, which is a very nice technique, and when he can pull it off on multiple occasions, it can really start to do some damage. He's not a huge kicker, but look for him to mix in some low kicks as well. He throws a nice 2-punch combination. And the big thing I saw him do in his last fight against Cole Miller, he would throw 2-punch combinations and then change levels for a body lock takedown, which added a very nice wrinkle to Hirota's offense, and I really was impressed with that. Once he gets on the ground, decent ground and pound. And for the most part against Miller, he wasn't scoring takedowns for the point of holding prolonged top position. It was more sort of throw him off his rhythm and make him guess what's coming next. Are you going to strike? Do I need to guard against a takedown? What's coming? And that really had a lot of benefits. Now, on the other side of things, he has had issues with his takedown defense, especially during his one-fight experience in Strikeforce, and then his early run in the UFC, giving up 11 takedowns over 3 fights. He had 8 takedowns landed over his last 2 offensively, so he has shown that he can flip the script, but again, it's been a point of vulnerability for guys that can take him down. And we know Cole Miller, great grappler, not known for his offensive wrestling, though. Cole Miller did get the better of Hirota at one point, getting on top and putting him in some bad spots, but Hirota showed a very good scramble game. Now, for Volkanovski, he has a big overhand right, and if he lands and connects that overhand right, his opponent is going to be in trouble. In one of his pre-UFC fights, he showed excellent timing, caught his opponent coming forward, and knocked him stupid with that right hand. But despite that power, he will be looking for takedowns, and he will be looking for takedowns early. He has a good level change. He'll need to throw some nice leg trips in there, and he'll shoot from the outside if needed. He's very good at putting opponents on their back. He's an aggressive guard passer. I like the way I saw in his debut. He moved past his opponent's guard very quickly. He wants to posture up, land that big ground and pound, and look for him to try and move in a half guard where he can kind of pin his opponent down and then swing freely and land those big time shots. If he can't get the fight to the ground initially, look for some clinch attack, heavy chest pressure in the clinch, putting his opponent on the cage and landing some knees. And then if he softens them up, feels them breaking from that position, he'll force them to the ground. Short elbows, also something along the cage he will look to land, again, changing levels after his strikes. Now, in his last fight against Kasuya, he got taken down early in that matchup, which kind of caught a lot of people off guard because they were saying, well, Volkanovski is the guy who's going to come out looking for the takedowns. He was taken down early. He came out way too aggressive. Again, debut, a little bit of jitters, came out way too aggressive, got taken down. Now, he got up fairly quickly, but that's definitely something that's a little bit of an eyebrow raiser, especially with what Hirota did in his last fight. We also saw Volkanovski at one point initiate, score a takedown, but lost a scramble, wound up on his back, and spent some time there. Eventually, he got back to top position, but it was one of those situations where, hey, is this guy more vulnerable than we realize on the mat? Can he be taken down by a fighter who's going to come out with that approach? Hirota's his mixed results versus wrestlers is certainly concerning on guys who look for the takedowns, but that new use of takedown adds that important element that could create issues for Alexander. Hirota, though, at times, for the most part, I say this, he needs to avoid being linear when he attacks. He tends to be a little bit repetitive, especially when he starts slowing down. He shows good head movement and footwork early on and different angles, and then once he gets a little bit tired, he becomes a little bit too linear in his approach. His hands start to drop down. His opponent starts sneaking strikes in over top of his guard. He tends to hold, he's vulnerable to the big right hand. His left hand tends to sink a little bit, and that opens him up from that big strike from the right side. I have questions about Volkanovski carrying his offense deeper into fights. He has done against lower level opposition, which is something he hasn't faced a huge array of opponents, and his last fighter opponent was coming off a long layoff. But I think the reach of Volkanovski, along with his power from the right side and the kicks, are going to be key on the feet. Look for the takedowns to add points against the lower output of Hirota, and I think once Hirota's forced to fight off his back too much, he's going to slow down. This could look similar to the Rodrigo Dam fight, as long as Hirota doesn't find a lot of success early on taking Volkanovski down. But my prediction is Alexander Volkanovski to defeat Mizuto Hirota by decision. In the second fight of the evening, we are in the UFC's flyweight division for a bout that absolutely could steal the show, as the 8th-ranked former title challenger Tim Elliott, 15 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw, takes the number 12th-ranked fighter in the division, Ben Nguyen, with a current record of 16 wins and 6 defeats. Now, Benavidez was originally scheduled to face Ben 10 in this matchup. He pulled out with an injury. Tim Elliott has stepped in as he has done in the past and is taking the fight in roughly a month, with a month to prepare. For Nguyen, he is looking to move closer to a title shot. He has not got that opportunity to fight for the gold yet, and he recognizes that there is a major void when it comes to title challengers, as we talked about in our intro, and a win over Tim Elliott could put him on the cusp of that opportunity. Overall, and the reason he's in the mix, he is 10-1 in his last 11 fights, his only loss coming to Louis Smolka. But Tim Elliott picked up a victory over Smolka, is coming off a win over Smolka. He is 4-1 in his last 5, that only loss coming in a very competitive back-and-forth matchup with Demetrious Johnson that saw Elliott threaten early in that fight, that had a lot of people thinking, is this the end of Demetrious Johnson? Obviously, DJ rallied and won the fight, but still very impressive performance by Tim Elliott, to say the least. Now, Elliott, physically 2 inches taller, over 1 inch reach advantage. He is a southpaw, which is worth noting. Nguyen tends to be a switch stance fighter, so he'll go back and forth, so that shouldn't be as big an issue for him. And he is 2 years younger than Timmy. Now, for Nguyen, he has big power for the division. 10 wins by knockout. That's pretty impressive. But at the same time, the guy's been knocked out 5 times, and all 6 of his losses have come by finish, including a submission defeat. And it's worth noting, all 6 of those defeats came after the first round. And as you saw in the Smolka fight, it seems to be, if you can push him, he is not nearly as durable or sturdy in the later rounds as he is in the opening frames. That's worth noting, especially against a guy like Tim Elliott, who is so aggressive and pursues that. He's in constant pursuit of offense. Now, Nguyen, he's an aggressive striker. He can land damage at both. Not done talking about Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott overall 6-4 in decisions, which is shocking considering how good he is at just putting up the offensive numbers. 5 submission wins overall, 3-1 in fights ended by knockout. And you look at the fighters he's faced in the past. Current champion Demetrious Johnson, he's faced Joseph Benavidez, John Dodson, Ali Bogatinov. That's almost a top 5 right there of competitors overall. Now for Nguyen, he's an aggressive striker. Damage can be done at both distance and in close. Look for me on some knees and elbows in the clinch, which are very impressive. He has a nice left hook, straight right combination. He'll also mix in a good left uppercut, and his head movement's pretty solid for a guy who wants to stand in there and mix it up. Look for him to throw some nice hard low kicks, and he mixes together his body and high kicks, and he throws them very similarly, so it's very difficult to determine, is he going to the body, is he going high, and makes it more difficult to defend against. In his last fight against Jeon Herrera, the combination of his speed and power was simply the key to his success on the feet. He was really having success backing Herrera up and hurt him on a couple of occasions. Now, Ben does have a tendency to run into strikes, which can create openings for takedowns. But overall, he's shown fairly decent takedown defense, and he's pretty solid in a scramble. Now, he can be taken down. Let's not put it. Let's call a spade. He can be taken down, and he has spent some time on his back, but he's not been overwhelmed as far as a heavy top position wrestler able to just plow over him from the get-go. Now, what Smolka did was Smolka used his constant transition game to just wear him out. Ben was able to counter into some good positions and get off his back and get on top, and had Mount a couple of times and had Smolka in some spots that were certainly undesirable, but he couldn't hold them, and Smolka eventually got back on top, and Ben eventually, the transition game just wore him out. Now, that's a great time to transition to talking with Tim Elliott, who is an excellent transitional wrestler slash scrambler. He's incredibly hard to defend against, so difficult to stay on top of. Even if he gets you down and you counter, he's ready to counter right back. Against Smolka, who is a fantastic ground fighter, as Ben Nguyen found out, almost every time Elliott and Smolka went to the mat, Elliott wound up in the better position. Didn't matter who initiated the takedown, who made the first move. It was always Elliott getting the last position that ended up being the superior spot. I really love the way Elliott strikes and changes levels, and he's been working hard for takedowns, but he's been working hard on focusing on maintaining top position once he gets there. He has struggled at times in doing so, but again, if he can get out of bad spots the way he can, it's very difficult for guys, and it can be discouraging for opponents. And you look at the takedown numbers. He's completed 12 takedowns in his UFC run, including 4 against Demetrious Johnson, 3 against Joseph Benavidez. He has good submission D overall, so if a fighter takes him down, again, I know Benavidez tapped him out, but again, if a fighter looks for submissions, Elliott's going to capitalize, defend, and get on top. And he kept leaving his neck exposed against Smolka, but he was able to defend and make that in his position. He never rests. his striking, even when he's striking, it's improving. There's a nice front to kick to the body. He'll throw some good punches to close the distance. His knees and elbows in close could be one of his better weapons. And, while his striking has been a bit of an issue, he did land 116 strikes as UFC best. He's coming off his second best, which is 57, so that 116 was a bit of a standout performance. The biggest thing is, though, again, he's always moving forward. Great cardio, and you don't know what to defend against. Now, Ben Nguyen, he has the power to hurt Elliott, especially if he gets on top. If Elliott makes a mistake, Ben Nguyen gets on top and starts landing big ground and pound. But Elliott is so hard to defend against, and he is so exhaustive. I think Tim's going to follow that blueprint that Smoka presented for facing Ben Nguyen. He's going to land takedowns. He's going to chain advancements together. He might wind up in a couple bad spots. He'll get out of them. And eventually he'll tire Ben Nguyen down. And my prediction is Tim Elliott to defeat Ben Nguyen by submission. Up next, we've got a fight that's going to bring all of the violence. And when I say all of the violence, it's going to be a hell of a throwdown as Jeon, the Hulk Cuta-Laba, representing the Republic of Moldova, 12 wins, 3 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on Frankenstein. It's the Hulk versus Frankenstein. What more can you ask for? Henrique Frank Wasson, or Frankenstein da Silva of Brazil, the current record of 12 wins and 2 defeats. Now, looking at these two they're younger fighters, which is fantastic in the light heavyweight division, but they're still a little bit green. Cutelaba comes in with a record of 1-2 in the UFC, despite having some very entertaining and very solid performances. He has 9 wins by knockout compared to 1 decision victory overall in his record. For Da Silva, he is 2-2 in the UFC, has lost back-to-back fights after a 2-0 start. He's coming off his first decision fight, and he has 11 victories by knockout. Both guys fought Johnny Bravo, Jonathan Wilson. Da Silva defeated him by second-round TKO. Cutelaba took a decision in that matchup. Physically, the Brazilian 2 inches taller, he'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, and he is 4 years older than Cutelaba, who is, I think, last time I heard, was the 4th or 5th youngest fighter in the promotion currently. Now, Da Silva's very wild. He's very aggressive, takes a lot of damage in the process of exchanging, but he keeps moving forward, looking to land that big fight-changing shot. He's a bit of a slow starter, but what he does do, he takes damage early and lets his opponents go to work. He stays there, and I said he keeps moving forward and capitalizes once they start to slow down. We saw him do it against Jonathan Wilson. We saw him do it against Ildemar Alcantara outside of the UFC in a fight he was losing badly, but eventually rallied once Alcantara kind of took a back step. Da Silva likes to, early on in that fight against Wilson, he was getting blasted early on with combinations. His guard's a little bit open. He hovers up when a lot of punches come his way, and he can get hit as a result. He tends to be a bit flat-footed, pushes forward, and attacks when his opponent is backtracking, and that's one thing worth watching for. Once the opponent starts stepping back, he will run forward and try and put it on them quickly. He throws a pretty good left jab, but most of his offense is wide-ranging hooks and overhand strikes. Any opponent who's able to come with shorter punches down the middle are going to land first, land some nice counters. He has been dropped multiple times, and while his chin has held up for the most part, it's still been a point of vulnerability and concern. He has nice body and high kicks as well, and he'll land a lot of clinches, and he's constantly looking to jam opponents up with the tie clinch once they move in and hammer away. Now, one point of vulnerability has been his takedown defense. Jordan Johnson took him down on 4 occasions and really outworked him on the mat. Overall in his UFC career, he has been, in 4 fights, he has landed just a single takedown while giving up 6 takedowns. Now, he can work off his back. We have seen him catch a submission. But again, if he gets taken down too many times, it's going to wear him out. And that's what Johnson did to him. Now, for Cuta-Laba, he has a lot of first-round finishes prior to coming to the promotion. Since coming to the UFC, he's had the longest fights of his career, which is not out of the ordinary. And now it's worth noting, against Jared Cannonier, which was one hell of a fight, talk about bringing the violence, he was off to a great start, faded, and Cannonier won that matchup. Jonathan Wilson, he got off to a great start as well. He faded, but he had put enough in the bank as far as offense early on to be awarded the victory. He has a tendency to attack in punching barrages. He never stops moving forward, though, and that's one thing I like about him. Leads with a left jab or a left hook. He throws a big power overhand right, certainly more technically refined than his opponent. Good combinations. Especially in that Jared Cannonier fight, he threw good combinations when he had him backed up, throwing a big left hook, and then multiple punches to the body, just crack, 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 and I really like what I saw there in that technique. Now, he was swarming Cannonier. He was landing knees in the clinch position. He will throw spinning techniques, elbows, and back fists. Threw a lot against, not a lot, but threw more against Misha Serkinov. Did throw 1 or 2 in the fight with Cannonier didn't connect on Eddie, but still it's an option he can go to. Now, he does come from a Greco-Roman wrestling background, and we saw that in the Cannonier fight. He landed 6 takedowns, and very impressive takedowns. He will go for subs, but just the fact he can put you on the ground and do damage is huge. Look for him to throw some throws, some hip tosses, the lateral drop, getting those overhooks and tossing his opponent. Is a very strong young man. Once he gets on the ground, he'll posture up for some heavy ground and pound strikes. But he needs to be careful against De Silva. When he postures up, that could leave too much of an opening for De Silva to rotate those hips, lock up an armbar, and the fight is over. As previously mentioned, Cuta-Laba's cardio is the biggest question mark here. De Silva has had success surviving early against fighters and then beating a tired guy late and putting them away, and that's something he's certainly capable of, despite the fact that Cuta-Laba has proven pretty darn durable. I think Cuta-Laba carries a more consistent pace with better volume and technique when he's striking. I think he's going to supplement that striking with takedowns, especially as he looks to try and pace himself, take Silva down, get on top, control the position, score points, but don't actually put yourself at risk. De Silva, his major issue with takedown defense, I think, is going to rear its ugly head again here. Cuta-Laba, though, he needs to attack efficiently to avoid that late collapse. My prediction is Jeon Cuta-Laba to defeat Henrique de Silva by decision. Our fourth contest on the main card takes place in the UFC's lightweight division as the Hangman, Dan Hooker, hometown boy from New Zealand, 14 wins, 7 losses, no draws, takes on the real deal Ross Pearson of England, 21 wins, 13 defeats, and 1 no contest. Pearson, a longtime UFC veteran. Now, the loser of this bout, despite that longevity on Pearson's part, could be out of a job. Pearson's 1-4 in his last 5. Hooker is 2-3. Neither guy has really been lighting the world on fire. And that, with all the cuts that are happening, you have to assume the loser of this fight could be out. Now, for Hooker, you look at his body of work, even with his 2 victories, he hasn't been that amazing. Against Hatsu Aoki, he lost the first round and was struggling before scoring the knockout. His other win lasted 84 seconds against Marco Diva, who's relatively inexperienced and now no longer with the promotion. So he really hasn't been a front runner in much of his action. He's coming off that loss to Jason Knight, which I predicted was a nice little upset for Knight. Knight, of course, has blossomed, and Hooker has certainly has not reached those heights of success yet. Now, for Pearson, he has fought very good competition, and he's looked decent doing so, but it's just not been enough at times. He has gone the distance 7 consecutive times, 3 of which ending by split decision, and he's a 2-1 record, so that tells you, 7 straight decisions, 3 splits, 2-1. He's having trouble convincing judges that he is the better fighter. Physically, Hooker 4 inches taller. The young man will have a 6-inch reach advantage, and he is the younger fighter by 6 years. Now, Hooker, despite his reach, tends to do a lot of his best work in close with short punches and elbows once his opponent closes that distance. When he tries to come forward, though, he does open himself to taking damage, and his offensive numbers not great. 3.43 strikes landed per minute, 4.73 strikes absorbed per minute. Now, those numbers have been skewed by the Knight fight, but even so, Hooker was still getting outlanded by his opposition more than he was outlanding them. Now, in his last fight, and he has showcased a little bit more lately, a lot of lateral movement. His hands tend to be a little bit low. He's moving his head. He looks loose. But again, he has struggled with pressure, especially backing up where he tries to just, move backward, pull his head back. Knight was landing some big shots, and he was actually dropped early by a straight right hand from Knight. And again, when he fought Yair Rodriguez, he was having trouble pulling the trigger. He had movement. He had opportunities. He just wasn't letting his hands go. His best weapon at distance is a good straight left hand, but again, he doesn't do it enough. It's a one and done scenario. And, against Knight, he was landing that straight left hand with pretty, good regularity and doing some damage with it. But for Jason Knight, he was throwing 6 punches. He was landing 3. Ultimately, he's outlanding him 3-1 despite not always landing all of his strikes. Now, again, the number is a little bit deceptive for Hooker. His takedown defense, 75%, but he's still been taking on a lot. Blanco took him down 3 times. Aoki and Yair Rodriguez each put him on his back twice, and Jason Knight 4 times. So that's an area of vulnerability where he cannot afford to get lazy. And overall, he is 1-5 in decisions, which is indicative of his style. He lacks volume and makes it hard to outwork opponents on the feet and or make up for takedowns that he gives up if he spends too much time on his back. Now, for Pearson, he's a long-established veteran, has faced many top opponents. One of the bigger concerns for Pearson has been his chin. He's been knocked out just 3 times in his career, but he's also been hurt on multiple occasions, so that's certainly worth noting. He has some power, but most of his knockout wins, especially in the UFC, have come against opponents who have a history of knockouts, like Gray Maynard, like George Soteropoulos, like Sam Stout. He relies heavily on his boxing, but he has a fairly decent kicking game. He's a Taekwondo black belt to back it up. He throws a nice step-in high or body kick. He really steps into and can do some damage. He'll mix in some low kicks, especially to the inside leg, which can cut away at his opponent's base, and it'll help him deal with the distance in this fight. Now, his numbers, not that impressive either as far as offense is concerned. 3.54 strikes landed per minute versus 3.57 strikes absorbed per minute. He has been outlanded in 5 straight fights, even in victory. He can counter-strike, but he needs to avoid being second too often, letting his opponent dictate the exchanges, and that, has to be a concern with Hooker's reach, where Hooker can reach him, and if Pearson goes to counter, he's just not going to be able to get a hold of him. Overall, he has pretty good footwork and head movement. He throws a nice leaping left hook and a hard straight left as well, which can do damage. He will attack his opponent's body. The KO of Sammy Stout came when he landed a body shot and then came with a rising left hook that took him out. Again, changing your opponent's level, their field of view and their defensive field can be very effective, and Pearson does that fairly well. We have seen Pearson have issues with opponents use wrestling, but that's really not Hooker's thing, and we have seen Pearson, use takedowns to his own right, so we could see him go that way and try and put Hooker on his back and replicate some of those issues he has had in the past. Overall, Pearson needs to be the busier fighter. Get on the inside, throw combinations, make it a dirty fight, pressure fighter, and he had success. We saw him have success against Will Brooks, against Edson Barboza a number of years ago, using that style. I think he does something similar here. Look for Ross to land in a takedown or two. This is going to be a close fight. Could very well be another split decision, but I like the veteran fighter here. My prediction is Ross Pearson to defeat Daniel Hooker by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we are in the UFC's middleweight divisions. The 8th-ranked Derrick Brunson, 16 wins and 5 defeats, takes on everyone's Cinderella story, the 15th-ranked Aussie Daniel Kelly, 13 wins and 1 loss. Now, Brunson overall has lost back-to-back fights after winning 5 in a row. The Anderson-Silva fight, which I picked Anderson to win, I felt he didn't do enough to win. So that was a bit questionable loss for Brunson, but still, it's a defeat nonetheless. For Daniel Kelly, he has won 4 in a row. He is 6-1 in the UFC, and he has been the underdog in all 7 of those fights. His only loss coming via knockout against Sam Alvey. He is coming off a win over former light heavyweight champion Rashad Evans, which is the biggest win of his career and damn impressive. Brunson is 1 inch taller. He'll have a 7-inch reach advantage. He is 7 years younger, and both men are southpaws. So again, that will give them a different look when they're both when they're exchanging. Now, Kelly, when you look at those numbers, he is usually the smaller man, or the older man, or the less experienced fighter, and he gives no fucks about it. That's for damn sure. And I like the way Dominique Cruz, who did the play-by-play in his last fight, Kelly's got knee wraps on. He don't care. He doesn't care if you kick him in the knee. He is a guy who is there to fight, and he just is glad to be in the moment. Brunson, BJJ purple belt, NCAA Division II wrestler, 8 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, 4-2 on the score cards. He does have 3 knockout losses: Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero, and Robert Whitaker, most recently taking him out with a knockout. Basically, Brunson has 2 modes. He's either knocking guys out or he's trying to wrestle them and clinch fight them. He has that big left hand, which is his big weapon, which if he can knock guys out, that's probably what he's going to do it with. When he fought Herman, he landed a couple of hard lefts along the cage and knocked him out. Same thing with Sam Alvey, clinch, knocked him out, bullying him along the cage before landing those big strikes. Against Uriah Hall, took him out with the left hand. He actually showed it, hesitated, stopped, and then boom, popped him with it, took him down as well. So very impressive. For Brunson, he just mixes things up. He'll punch, clinch, dirty box, lands uppercuts to the inside. Everything he does is very hard, very effective when he's really being aggressive. He does have a tendency to overextend when attacking. He did it before the Whitaker fight. Against Sam Alvey, did the same thing. Overcommits, leaves his chin out there. And again, in that fight and against Whitaker, which actually the way it happened, is if you go for it early and you don't get it, you are leaving yourself open to get finished like you did against Whitaker. I have no doubt that had Sam Alvey survived that first round, things might have been very, very different in that fight. Again, he tried to swarm and overwhelm Whitaker, couldn't take him out, faded, hurt, finished. Against Anderson Silva, he tried to be more conservative. Sit back, pick his spots to engage. He wasn't busy enough. Again, close fight. Silva got the nod, probably because of his name, but still, Brunson needs to do a little bit more. He did have a lot of success in the clinch, landing those hooks around the guard of Anderson Silva and coming with some uppercuts as well. So that's something we might see here against a very clinch-capable fighter in Daniel Kelly. Kelly comes from a judo background, a former Olympian. Fights very gritty, sticks around, wears opponents down. He will slow down, but he keeps moving forward, and guys get very discouraged. He lost the opening round against Carlos Jr. And eventually rallied when he faded and took him out. Bit of a slow start against Chris Camozzi, who's known for his durability, and Kelly just out-durability him, if that makes any sense, and won the fight. He'll take shots to land them. He's not a pretty striker. He's not over fleet of foot, but he is willing to stand there and do his job. Now, some of his techniques, and in the Evans fight, I really liked what he saw, and Cruz did a great job of breaking it down. He would throw a right jab or a right hook, sometimes doubling it up, and then he slips off to the right and channels a left hand right down the middle and pop right in his opponent's grill. And again, that's that, southpaw versus orthodox striker. He's stepping away from his opponent's power punching and landing his own. In this fight, will that be a possibility with two southpaws? It'll be there to land, but he's still going to be exposed to that power punching side of Derrick Brunson. Kelly lands some short punches on the inside. He'll mix in some uppercuts as well. If he closes the distance, that can be a point where he can do some damage. He's hard to take down, and I like the way if he gets taken down, he's very strong at getting his feet underneath him, getting back up. He will give up his back, but it's harder for opponents to get a hold of him. Evans, was getting in deep, and Kelly was defending those opportunities and wearing himself down in the process. Evans was. Kelly's very strong in the body clinch position, tough to take down, looks for trips, looks for takedowns. If he can get them, that's fantastic. If not, at least he's forcing his opponent to work and defend. Derrick Brunson, he could easily overwhelm Daniel Kelly in this fight, like he tried to do against Whittaker, like he did against Sam Alvey. He wants to make up for the Anderson Silva performance. He's gonna come in focused on not letting it go to the judges, especially not facing a guy who would be considered the local fighter, and certainly a guy who's pulled off upset after upset. He's going to come out motivated to get the job done. I think that works against him here. I think Kelly's going to survive that start. He's going to eventually, grind and get a hold of Derrick Brunson and clinch up with him, grind him down, land those short strikes in close, land those combinations with the right, followed by the power left, step in, power left. I think we're going to see Brunson start to slow down. That fight will progress. We have not seen Brunson, other than the Anderson Silva fight, have a lot of longer fights. The Anderson Silva fight wasn't a grueling matchup. And I think eventually Kelly gets going, wears him out, maybe similar to Yoel Romero, and my prediction is Daniel Kelly to defeat Derrick Brunson by TKO. We're going for another upset. In the main event of the evening, we got the big boys. We are in the heavyweight divisions. The 6th-ranked Derrick, the Black Beast Lewis, 18-4-0, 1-no contest, takes on the 7th-ranked fighter in the division, Mark, the Super Samoan Hunt, fighting at home in New Zealand, 12 wins, 11 losses, 1-no contest. Lewis is moving towards the title shot. Once thought to be an absolute pipe dream. The guy used to show, I want the belt after he'd win a fight, and people would laugh. But now they're going, holy shit, the guy's 1 or 2 wins away from getting that opportunity. He has won 6 in a row, 5 of which coming by knockout. For Mark Hunt, he is coming off a brutal loss to Alistair Overeem, brutal knockout loss. He is winless in his last 2 after back-to-back wins over Bigfoot Silva and Frank Mir. He is nearing the end of his UFC tenure. He's had some issues with the UFC. Things are going sour for Hunt, but he had a hell of a fun run as well at one point. Physically, Lewis, 6'3", he's 5 inches taller. He'll have a 7-inch reach advantage. Hunt could be a couple of pounds heavier, but he's 11 years older than the Black Beast. Looking at Hunt first, he has 9 wins by knockout, but he has also lost now 5 times by knockout, including his 4 last defeats, all coming by KO or TKO. That's starting to add up. He is also 0-6 in fights ended by submission. He hasn't been submitted since 2010, but it still tells us he's vulnerable on the mat. He is 3-0 in decisions, though, which is shocking. Going the distance, you don't think would be his best weapon. For Lewis, 16 wins by knockout, 2 KO losses against Sean Jordan and Matt Mitrione. He has 1 submission win, 1 and 2 in the scorecards. Despite his lack of decision victories, he carries his power exceptionally well deeper into fights, and his cardio, it might not be perfect, and he might slow down a little bit or a lot, but he's still incredibly dangerous. And one of the things he does is he might be tired, but he preys on guys who are tired and takes advantage of them and takes them out. 4 of his last 6 stoppages have come outside of the opening round. Now, Lewis likes to take his opponents down. That's where the majority of his knockouts come. Look for him to look for those takedowns along the cage. Once he gets on top, control the position, unload with power, and he has a deadly top control. Also, if a fighter, and I don't think this is Mark Hunt's approach, but we have seen Hunt change things up a little bit. If a fighter tries to take him down, Lewis is very good at defending and turning that failed takedown attempt into a top position spot where he can do damage. And he wears guys out looking for takedowns. Against Gabriel Gonzaga, a very good ground fighter, Lewis just remained calm once taken down, gave up his back, stood up, shook him off, and then boom, went to work. Now, Lewis's striking is improving. He cracked Roy Nelson with some massive strikes, especially later in that fight, but he struggled to get in range against Shamil Abdurrahimov, and definitely didn't do much until he was able to get the fight to the ground. It was kind of a boring fight as a result. He throws big kicks, big single strikes, hard uppercuts. Everything is hard. Steps in exceptionally well when he throws. He caught Gabriel Gonzaga along the cage with a big flurry, landed a big right to eventually put him down. But again, that's not something he wants to be doing. Exchanging with Mark Hunt, he does have a tendency to overswing when he strikes, overextend himself. He'll brawl. Sometimes he telegraphs his punches a little bit. He can be seen coming as far as his offense is concerned. When he fought Mitrione, he walked right into the knockout there, couldn't recover. He was dropped by a hook kick of Sean Jordan. So again, those are some issues. that he's had. He had trouble against Travis Brown closing the gap early. And he was actually getting kicks to the body that seemed to be hurting him, apparently. And, it wasn't his fight until Brown slowed down, Hunt started doing Lewis started doing damage, and he took the fight over. Now, for Mark Hunt, the guy's a dangerous, dangerous striker. He throws hard low kicks. Not enough, though. Maybe that's because he's concerned about being taken down, but certainly that's a weapon he doesn't utilize nearly enough. A beautiful straight right. He'll work in a left uppercut, and he has that leaping left hook that can be absolutely devastating. His best strikes come in short combinations on the inside. He brutal uppercut knockout of Roy Nelson. He tends to be a little bit flat-footed in the center of the cage, which, again, when he's got that type of power, he wants to generate as much as possible. Again, it can be creating an issue for a guy looking to take him down. Look for Hunt to come forward with a 1-2, land a barrage of hooks if he gets his opponent backed up. Again, that leaping left hook will set up a right hook as well, and he'll just throw some step-in elbows. He's very dangerous, and he's creative with his striking, despite the fact that sometimes it's just, hey, I'll throw whatever I need to throw. The power will do the rest. Now, against Derrick Lewis, he needs to find a way to get into range, to land those strikes without being taken down. He's fought bigger men all the time, and that's something that's not new to him, but he is getting up there in age. When he fought Stipe Miocic pre-title fight for Stipe, Hunt was having trouble with that forward pressure, and he was getting taken down, and the grappling took a lot out of him, and as that fight progressed, he just disappeared. Both Stipe and Brock Lesnar dominated him on the mat, and I think the threat of being taken down against Lesnar prevented Hunt from pushing forward and attacking. I think that could play a role here as well. If Hunt can land, as is the case in most of his fights, the fight is over. He didn't land against Overeem enough, and that cost him. Lewis has had issues taking big shots before, and the countering factor, if Lewis gets wild, Hunt could sneak something in and put him down with one shot. And fighting at home certainly could buoy Mark Hunt's efforts, but I think Lewis needs to push forward, drive Hunt backwards, use a single leg, not a double leg. Hunt does a good job defending that double leg. Use that single leg to catch him off balance. You try and push Mark Hunt over, that low center of gravity will hold up. But if you get him off balance and start taking away his base, that's when he gets in trouble. Use that single leg, turn that corner, run the pipe, put him on the mat. Once on top, Lewis's mount is too much for anybody to deal with, especially a guy like Mark Hunt, who might not be known. He's decent getting back up, but again, Lewis is a mountain to get up on from underneath. And my prediction is Derrick Lewis to defeat Mark Hunt by TKO. Probably fighting at home, this could be the last time we see Mark Hunt win, lose, or draw. And if that is the case, thank you very much, Mark Hunt, for all your efforts and your great career. But again, Derrick Lewis to defeat Mark Hunt by TKO. So those are my six main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 110, which will take place this Saturday. Again, all of my preliminary predictions available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. My bet packs, let's take it for what it's worth. You don't want to be one of those guys who rides with me through my slumps and then misses out on a high. I hope it's coming. I'm putting work in. I like some of the fights I'm looking at. I've got a little extra time this week to break things down, so we'll have to see how that plays out. That plays a factor. Again, I thought I did much better than my 7-5 record indicated last show. I thought I was about 8-4. Should have had that Marlon Moraes victory. Either way, it is what it is. We'll keep putting the work in. If you want to buy, please buy. If you don't, by all means, don't. Continue to like my videos. I appreciate that very much. Follow me on, what's that thing? Twitter. And thanks, guys, for tuning in. Always appreciate listening to you, you listening to me and me knowing you're out there. Take care. Talk soon.